The Orks, a very popular faction. For good reason. Who doesn't love these lovable rapscallions, these horrifying barbarian brutes with Looney Tunes logic? At least that's what the community largely puts on them. That's not exactly their in-stories characteristic, but they do hit this sweet spot of comic relief and an actual horrifying threat that the universe of 40k has to deal with constantly. And I personally would not be surprised if the Orks were many people's first exposure to Warhammer. Sure, you might have seen Space Marines, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you started getting into Warhammer with the idea of the Orks and how absolute goofy they are, how fun their characters are, and the main bit of this video, their entire power of a collective belief. As the telling goes, Orks have this ability of collective belief. If a lot of them, a massive amount of them, believe something to be true, it becomes true. They have a psychic background presence that kind of binds together and creates these aspects to be true. We've heard many different forms of this, as pretty low down and simple as red makes you go faster, to the lot more outlandish stories of I'm a tank. But here's the thing. I got thinking very recently, what's the line? Not talking about the community or anything like that. How does it really work in canon? So I set out to work on this video where my intention was to find how exactly and how far the Orks could believe something to be true. Could they alter the entire universe on a grand scale, or was it relegated to smaller changes? I didn't achieve that goal because this turned out to be a much bigger rabbit hole. This power is often referred to as the Waaagh, and we should clear up what the Waaagh actually is because there's like 3 definitions of it. First and foremost, the simplest, it's the war cry. It's what Orks yell as they're charging and ready to kill you. The second thing is Waaagh is a collection of Orks that have built together to wage war. Every giant conglomeration of Orks that are raging through the galaxy, that is a Waaagh, all led by very powerful war bosses, and they are binded together psychically. That passive background, like energy they emit, that's what connects the Orks. You get enough Orks in one area, they start getting hyped up, their emotions run wild, that ripples to the warp, more Orks come running because they want to crump some fools. And then third, the Waaagh is, again, that passive psychic field that affects reality. An Ork will believe that this car with no gasoline, well, the boss said it had gasoline and you killed a little Gretchen while doing it, so it must be true. You turn the keys, boom, your car's working. You know where those stories don't pop up though? The novels or the codexes, like at all, to where I started thinking, how true is this? I did digging. I dug through a lot of sources here. I'm talking codexes, I'm talking novels, I'm talking White Dwarf articles. So I'm gonna lay out a lot of information. This information, to the best of my knowledge, is canonical and all backed up with sources. I have a lot of sources I went through. If I get something wrong, or you believe I got something wrong, feel free to correct me. I actually love being corrected because I don't want to deliver misinformation. There is a channel member who often does this. He corrects me, mentions things that I left out for whatever reason, maybe stuff I just didn't see, anything like that. I appreciate them. You know who you are. So the first place I went is Codexes, starting with, let's say, first edition, Rogue Trader. Now, Rogue Trader, this era of 40k, is not something you should really point to as canon. The actual jump in lore from first to second edition is major. There's some great examples of why. Looking at you, Lehman Russ of first edition. But I wanted to see where a lot of the stuff with the Orks started. And I will say, the actual Rogue Trader Codex for Orks, really, really cool. A large reason of it is because, like, the Orks haven't changed much. A lot of the orky elements are still recognizable here, they just look more like fantasy orcs and goblins. But the only thing related to orcish belief and that collective group belief is colors. As we all know, red makes you go faster. Blue is lucky. Green is the best color. But the wording is very specific in that it says they believe that red goes faster. And in fact, that's a lot of the wording, because I then jumped to second edition and then fourth edition. Because fourth edition is referenced a lot. It is one of the key references you'll find if you look up the wiki stuff for orc belief in the Waaagh energy. Fourth edition is what they point at. And the large reason of this is because there's a single mechanics character, Janitor Lucas Anzon, who has a theory on how orc tech works. Because when you look at orc tech and all their vehicles and their weapons, how the hell does this operate? What Anzon proposes is that the orc tech works because the orc believes that it will work. And his proof of this is that if a human being picks up an orc gun, it's not going to operate. It's not going to work. Only an orc can use orc tech. It's also very strongly said that this is a theory. And a theory I don't believe is true, largely because there are many different examples in the books of characters using orc stuff. One that I can immediately point to because I like it is Caiaphas Cain, Death and Glory. They steal an orc buggy in that book, and other guardsmen steal other orc vehicles. They work just fine. Are they as good as Imperial stuff? Not in the slightest. These cars suck. There are more examples, like Space Marines using orc shit. There's a lot of examples in the novels that you at home might know. And to be fully transparent, this could be a case of Black Library authors not knowing this little lore blurb. I don't blame them. This is just tucked away in the 4th edition Codex. Maybe editors missed this fact. Maybe. On the other hand, this could not be true, which is kind of cemented in a lot of the stuff about the odd boys, which is orcs with specialties. Now, how this works is kind of tied into the Waaagh. These beings, the orcs, are psychically created way back in the day by the old ones to wage war against the Necrons in the War in Heaven. The orcs are created to be perfect bioweapons. They are born through spores. You kill an orc, you're gonna have more. They are everywhere. They are also somewhat psychic in this aspect. They are perfectly psychically linked to gather together, and the actual odd boys, they all have these specialties that are psychically imparted on them. They don't go to orc college. A mech boy gets an idea of something to create, an augment, a new vehicle thing, whatever. He runs into a shop, works on it for a long ass time, then comes out and it works. He doesn't know where the idea came from, and he also doesn't care. He doesn't know where the knowledge to even do this stuff came from. It just hit him. If you read the stuff about the mech boys, despite a lot of the appearances of orc machinery, it works. Like, this stuff works, it operates, just in the proper orky style. So this got me thinking, is the Waaagh, the Green Roar, the orc gestalt consciousness, as many different names as there are for it, is this even accurate? Is this even a thing? Does it exist? I am starting to believe it doesn't. Literally, the one bit I have a harder time disputing is the colors. The whole thing with orcish colors, because these actually have mechanical benefits, and these effects are all expressed on the tabletop in rules. There's a bit of an issue. You don't want to always rely on like tabletop rules and just rules in general for actual 40k lore, because a lot of times when they intersect, it creates a little bit of weirdness. I made a Blood Ravens video that goes over this. A lot of the Blood Ravens, or magpies who steal stuff, is the interaction of a necessary game mechanic and jokes. Like, just jokes that the devs were making when writing lore tags. The bit with orcs with colors is that all of the language used for orc stuff is that they believe. In later codexes, this starts to become a lot more like ironed out, where there are references where it just says they believe that red goes faster, and somehow it does. Personally, and this is the most theorizing I'm going to do because I do not have hard evidence either way, I do not believe that orc colors do anything. I think that there is a lot of fun in believing the orcs and everything that they actually believe in their culture and just admitting, yeah, they're right. However, I believe that this could be confirmation bias and a lot of the language being very not specific, and there's no out of universe text going over the colors. There's nothing objectively saying this is the case, but I think there's an argument to be made that are red orc trucks faster, or do they paint the faster trucks red? However, the stuff I feel a lot more confident on. After a lot of digging, I want to explain how exactly the Waaagh works, how the orc gestalt consciousness operates, and with this, what it can't do. So, like I said right at the beginning, the orc Waaagh is that passive psychic field that they emanate, and there's also the collecting of orcs to wage war. These are very closely connected because this passive energy field, all the orcs are connected, like all of them. When enough orcs gather in one spot, it sends larger and larger ripples. When the emotions get pumping, everyone else wants to wage some more. They start running in, which then makes the field grow even stronger, which makes the Waaagh get bigger. It's really clear, Waaghs, they snowball really fast. That's one of the things that makes them so dangerous. how do you actually deal with an orc Waaagh? You have to dismantle the field. You have to kill enough, make them lose engagements, kill off the war bosses. With that, the actual Waaagh will fall apart because that psychic energy is dissipating. The emotions are changing from hype at murder, hype at warfare, to starting to be annoyed that they're losing, starting to not like their buddies all around them, and that's how you get the classic ending to most Waaghs: infighting in civil wars. And this psychic field literally connects the orcs, because there are examples of orcs being able to sense each other's locations and know, oh yeah, there's some orcs in the area. They just can innately sense that. And fun fact, when a lot of orcs are collected like this, it creates like a form of the Shadow of the Warp for the Tyranids, because it is a lot of psychic energy being sent into the warp, and when psychers are trying to tap into it or try to get a message through, all they hear is like the chanting of the orcs ready for war. Though at least it seems less immediately deadly than trying to tap into the Tyranid hive mind when they're around, because most people die. And this energy is how the Weird Boys do their psychic powers. Weird Boys are unwilling orc psychers. They get filled up by this psychic energy and they have to expel it, or they will explode, and the orcs around them. The best way I can describe how this works is it's like a balloon. You're filling up a balloon with air, and if you want to keep going, you're gonna have to let some air out. That is them casting like a lightning bolt. And if you fill it with too much air, they just don't cast anything, they explode. The greatest example of this is through the War of the Beast storyline, specifically the book The Last Son of Dorn. In this story, they directly exploit the orc Waaagh and using Weird Boys. Their plan to break the Waaagh in this story is to capture some Weird Boys, have them next to a bunch of Sisters of Silence, just the blanks turning off their psychic abilities, and then when all of the orcs are in the same general area, the Sisters of Silence leave the Weird Boy. The concept is that this will send massive ripples through the Orcus Gestalt field, because they're all connected. And this works. This works really well. Going back to my analogy, even though the blank is there, turning off all psychic powers or anything, the balloon is still filling. So once suddenly the balloon is back, it explodes and sends a giant chain reaction through all of the orcs in the area. The reason I like that story is because it's kind of surprising to me how much the Imperium knows but the orc Gestalt consciousness. The Mechanicus has done some very serious research. I gotta give him props on this front. But the thing they don't mention is orc belief mattering at all. And based off of this story, I think if that was a thing, they would have mentioned it and maybe thrown around finding a way to exploit it. Because there are a lot of stories on the internet about the orcs using this power of belief in many different ways. And also theories, like, I am sad to say Commissar Yark was not immortal because the orcs believed he was immortal. That's something I've heard floating around. It's not true, besides the fact that he's dead. Even then, like, he got a laser eye, the Bale eye, because he heard orcs thought he had a laser eye. His look could kill a man. That whole thing, I've seen it kind of misconstrued that, oh yeah, he gained it because of the orc belief. No, he lost his eye in a battle, he heard orcs believe this about him, and thought, why don't I make that real? Or another theory about the orcs keeping the Emperor alive because they heard about this human, really cool warrior and believed no one could take him down, therefore the Emperor is immortal. There's nothing backing that up. Or just a lot of story examples I've heard, like the I'm a Tank story is like the big one, but there's like a couple more, which let me talk about the I'm a Tank story, because this story was not about orcs originally at all. Fun fact, this has been like a joke that's been floating around for a while. I know I'm pointing to like a Reddit joke of this. However, something even funnier, I remember this story from my childhood because this joke is actually a campfire skit for the Boy Scouts that I have done. The two skits I remember from that era of me in Boy Scouts is this one and the Invisible Bench. So no, this wasn't written for the orcs. It was just they were slapped on top of it because the orcs kind of fit a really fun role where you can have a lot of these kind of floating internet jokes and just slap orcs on it to make it silly, because they are. But in this video, I've been going a lot about orc belief and how it's not real. I do want to say, I don't blame anybody for believing this is real or even wanting this to be real. Because to be completely honest, I don't really care if somebody doesn't have like the exact strict to canon view of 40k lore. I don't care that about any of the games I talk about or enjoy. People can enjoy games however they want. I'm not gonna shit on a casual fan for not knowing the lore is like good as me. I think that's a little weird. It's the same route of, I've always thought the tourism insult was dumb and weird, though that is mainly because I don't attach my self-worth to how dedicated I am to a product. Could just be me, I don't know. I go outside too much to care about that insult. But the only times I'm going to get annoyed at somebody being wrong about the lore is if they are a self-ascribed lore master and they're consistently getting something wrong, or somebody's very purposefully rejecting evidence in front of you. I'm not someone who participates in headcanon. That's not what I enjoy out of the things I like play and talk about. But like with orcs, I think it's kind of fair to keep the orc belief as a headcanon and consider that true in your 40k. Because like I have a soft spot for this aspect of orc lore. It's a large thing that got me even deeper into 40k. I am a little saddened by the fact that I've went through this entire rabbit hole coming out of, wow, there's just this large part I believed about the orcs that's just not true. That might be a hot take that I'm perfectly willing to let people believe wrong information, but not everyone needs to be as dedicated to the lore as I am. I think there's a market for casual fans. And in all honesty, if there's stuff out there bringing in new people, fresh new eyes into a hobby that I enjoy and play, I'm happy. That's like my secret goal of the channel, as I like to mention, is to trick all of you at home into getting into my hobbies. The thing I will always do though, is I will make sure and do my best to have just this information, the full, right, in-depth information, is going to be accessible. If you're a casual fan, you just like this element of the orcs, I don't know, ignore this. Do what you want. Keep having fun with the orcs, but if you're somebody who wants to delve even deeper, there's a lot of sources out there, and I think there's a lot of interesting depth to Warhammer that you can get when you're not fully taking it in through like fun facts and Twitter memes. It's a little rambly, this ending, I know, and it's mainly just because this orc lore has like a soft spot for me. I have other parts of 40k lore that I'll get unreasonably upset at, which I will perfectly admit is because I'm a hypocrite. They're largely fan theories. I just don't like a lot of the fan theories because they fall apart the moment you read a book. But yeah, that's the video. If you like this, like, comment, subscribe, do that stuff. Major shout out to my channel members who make all these videos possible. I'm super appreciative. And a huge shout out to my top tier channel members, that being Ultra Mega Jesus, Robbie Beckmeyer, and Czar Shadow. Absolute legends, the three of you. But yeah, that's it. See ya.